The night was cold, the forest alive with whispers only the bravest dare to hear. Twin brothers Lucas and Noah Kendrick vanished without a trace during a late-night hike 8 years ago. For nearly a decade, their disappearance was a mystery that haunted Pinecrest, swallowed by shadows and silence. Until one morning, deep in the heart of those same ancient woods, hikers stumbled upon something chilling, pinned to a gnarled tree, a weathered wooden plaque carved with their names, and strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural life. What dark secret were the brothers chasing? What force has kept their fate hidden all this time? And who or what is still watching from the shadows? As old legends collide with dangerous truths, the hunt to uncover what really happened is just beginning. Because in Pinecrest, some mysteries don't just vanish, they wait. The cold air bit sharply against Lucas Kendrick's face as he tightened the straps on his backpack, the early September chill seeping through his jacket. Moonlight filtered down through the thick canopy of pine needles, casting long shadows that danced on the forest floor. Every crackle of dry leaves beneath his boots sounded louder than usual, the silence around him thick and almost unnatural. Beside him, Noah adjusted his headlamp, the soft beam cutting a narrow path ahead, but barely pushing back the darkness beyond. The twins exchanged a quick glance, a silent mix of excitement and a flicker of hesitation, but neither spoke it aloud. This was their annual ritual, a tradition they had kept since childhood, and tonight it carried a weight neither fully understood. "We're starting late," Noah whispered, his breath visible in the frigid air, fingers fumbling with the zipper of his jacket. "The storm's supposed to roll in by midnight." Lucas shrugged off the concern with a cocky grin, his eyes sparkling under the dim glow of the lamp. "We've done this hike a dozen times. The forest hasn't changed, and neither have we." His voice held a calm certainty, but beneath it was the pulse of nerves, a subtle thrum of adrenaline he didn't want to admit. He glanced back toward the trailhead where Marcus stood, arms crossed and brow furrowed. Marcus's hesitation was palpable, his unease like a shadow at the edge of the brothers' boldness. Marcus's voice broke through the quiet. "You sure you want to do this tonight? The forecast looks bad. Maybe we should wait." Lucas didn't turn but called over his shoulder, his tone light but firm. "We'll be fine. We know this forest like the back of our hands." He sounded confident, too confident, perhaps. Noah gave Marcus a small apologetic smile but didn't argue. The three had been friends since grade school, but Lucas and Noah's bond was something else, a silent promise that they were unstoppable when together. The wind picked up, rustling the branches overhead, carrying with it a faint scent of pine mixed with damp earth. Lucas inhaled deeply, trying to steady his racing heart. The air felt electric, alive with something unseen. He told himself it was just excitement, the thrill of the wilderness calling, the last taste of freedom before the college years began. They stepped onto the narrow trail, their footsteps muffled by a thick layer of fallen needles. Lucas led the way, each confident stride swallowing the distance with ease. Noah followed closely, matching his brother's pace, though his eyes darted nervously to the shadows, as if expecting the trees themselves to shift and reveal something lurking within. Marcus lingered at the trailhead a moment longer, watching their retreating figures, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. He checked his watch, then his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he debated following them or calling it off. "We'll be back before the moon's high," Lucas promised, his voice echoing faintly in the stillness, filled with a reckless hope that masked the tension beneath. He didn't know how haunting those words would become. The forest had swallowed the last vestiges of daylight, and the thick canopy above blotted out the stars, turning the trail into a corridor of deep shadows. Lucas led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the dense underbrush, but even his steady steps couldn't hide the tension tightening in Noah's chest. Every snap of a twig, every distant rustle sent a ripple of unease through him, as if the woods themselves were watching, waiting. The familiar sense of pine and damp earth now carried an unsettling edge, mixed with the faint metallic tang of rain approaching. Behind them, unseen in the darkness, the wind whispered through the branches, carrying sounds that neither brother could identify, soft murmurs, like voices just beyond hearing, and an occasional low groan that stirred the hairs on their necks. Noah's breath came faster. "Lucas, did you hear that?" His voice barely rose above a whisper, but the forest seemed to absorb it, swallowing the question whole. Lucas glanced back, his confident grin flickering. "It's just the wind messing with your head. We've been through this forest 100 times. Nothing new." But even Lucas's certainty felt fragile, like a candle fighting a gust. Noah pressed on, trying to steady his nerves, but the darkness grew heavier with every step. The trail narrowed, roots twisting like serpents underfoot, and the flashlight flickered once before steadying. The twins' rhythm slowed as the shadows seemed to press closer, the path winding into a maze where every tree looked the same. At the trailhead, Marcus paced restlessly, the glow of his phone the only light against the creeping night. He scanned his screen again, checking the time. Hours had passed since the twins vanished into the woods. A chill pricked his skin, and he rubbed his arms, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread. "Where are you guys?" he muttered, voice tight with worry. His fingers hovered over the phone, debating whether to call them again, but the silence on the other end gnawed at him like a weight. He tried to shake off the feeling, blaming it on the night and the stories that clung to these mountains like ivy. Yet, every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Back on the trail, the first drops of rain began to patter softly against leaves, a warning whispered from the gathering storm. Noah shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. "Maybe we should turn back," he suggested, voice trembling. Lucas shook his head, jaw set firm. "We're almost at the old oak. Just a little further." His words were meant to reassure, but the strain was clear in his eyes. Suddenly, the beam of Lucas's flashlight caught something, a dark shape just beyond the trees, too still to be an animal. Noah's heart slammed against his ribs. "Did you see that?" he gasped. Lucas scanned quickly, but the figure had vanished like a shadow melting into the night. "Probably just a deer," Lucas replied, though his voice lacked conviction. Meanwhile, in Pinecrest, whispers had already begun to ripple through the town like wildfire. By the time the rain thickened into a steady drizzle, Marcus had alerted Sheriff Cole, whose gravelly voice crackled over the radio with calm urgency. "Gather every able body. We'll comb these woods till dawn if we have to." The sheriff's weathered face was set hard with worry as he issued orders, eyes scanning the darkening horizon. His teams fanned out into the trees, flashlights bobbing like fireflies swallowed by the storm. As the search parties pressed deeper, the forest's mood shifted. The air grew colder, and the wind howled through the branches with a voice that sounded almost mournful. Some searchers muttered old warnings, tales of disappearances and shadows that moved where no human should tread. "These woods have a mind of their own," one volunteer whispered, clutching his coat tighter. Near the ancient oak, the twins' backpacks lay abandoned, half hidden beneath a blanket of wet leaves. The sight struck a cold blow to everyone who found them. No signs of struggle, no footprints leading away, just empty packs and the eerie silence of the forest closing in. Marcus knelt beside the gear, his fingers trembling as he rifled through a loose notebook tucked inside, hoping for a clue, a sign. Hours bled into the night, and the storm's fury grew, raindrops hammering down like cold fists on the canopy. The searchers' flashlights cut through the rain-slicked darkness, but the twins themselves were gone without a trace. Panic gnawed at the edges of hope. Sheriff Cole gathered the teams, his voice low but steady. "They can't just vanish without a trace." Days bled into weeks, each sunrise heavy with the same unanswered question. Where were Lucas and Noah? The town of Pinecrest had transformed overnight from a quiet mountain village to a restless hive of whispered fears and desperate hope. Posters plastered on every lamp post and storefront bore the twins' faces, smiling, vibrant, frozen in time, while candles flickered in windows and church steps, their flames trembling against the encroaching chill. But the forest swallowed all traces of the brothers, as if they had vanished into the earth itself. Marcus stood by the riverbank one damp morning, the mist curling over the water like pale fingers, his breath fogging the cold air. His fingers trembled as he clutched a worn photograph of the twins, dog-eared and creased from constant handling. He stared down at the placid surface, willing some sign to rise from its depths. "Come back," he whispered, voice cracked and raw. The weight of guilt pressed deep into his chest. He should have stopped them. He should have listened. Instead, he'd stood rooted, watching two boys walk into a nightmare he couldn't yet see. Inside the cramped sheriff's office, Sheriff Cole sat hunched over a cluttered desk, maps spread before him like a battle plan. His eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, traced the routes where search parties had scoured every inch. The reports came back the same: no footprints beyond the initial campsite, no snapped branches, no cries caught by the wind. "Something isn't right," Cole muttered, rubbing a hand over his weathered face. He leaned back, fingers steepled. The idea gnawed at him, the Pinecrest curse that some townsfolk whispered in hushed tones. Old legends about the forest's hold on lost souls, about strange lights and voices that lured hikers away. He'd never believed them, not fully. But the emptiness where the twins should be had begun to crack his certainty. At Marcus's cluttered kitchen table, the dim glow of a single lamp illuminated pages spread wide. Lucas's journal. The handwriting was neat but hurried, the ink smudged in places as if written in moments of urgency. Marcus's fingers traced the cryptic sketches, interlocking symbols that twisted and spiraled, some resembling ancient runes, others strange markings like the veins of leaves. A note caught his eye. "They watch beneath the old oak. Not all shadows are cast by trees." He felt a chill creep up his spine, the words echoing in the stillness. His mind replayed their last conversation. Lucas had been restless, eyes alight with a strange mix of excitement and fear. "Noah and I think we found something, Marcus. Something no one else sees." Marcus had brushed it off, worried about the dangers the forest might hold, but unwilling to dive into what sounded like fantasy. Now, every word in that journal was a claw, tearing at his conscience. What had the twins stumbled upon? And why had it taken them away? That evening, Marcus walked the perimeter of the forest edge, the crunch of fallen leaves underfoot sharp in the silence. The wind whispered low, carrying scents of pine and damp earth, but also something less natural, a faint metallic tang, like cold iron. His eyes darted to the looming old oak, its twisted branches silhouetted against the darkening sky. He recalled the searchers' find. The twins' abandoned backpacks, tossed carelessly near the tree's gnarled roots. No sign of struggle.
No explanation.
"Do you believe in curses?" A voice called softly from behind him. Marcus turned to see Sheriff Cole approaching, the sheriff's face shadowed but his gaze steady. "Not the kind with spells and magic," Cole said, voice rough but honest. "But this forest, it holds secrets, old ones, things people were better off leaving alone." He paused, then added, "The Pinecrest curse isn't just a story to scare kids. It's a warning." Marcus swallowed hard, the knot of dread tightening. "Then what do? We can't just sit here waiting for them to come back. Or worse." His voice faltered. "Or worse." Cole nodded grimly, eyes flickering toward the dark trees. "We keep searching. We dig deeper. But we do it carefully. The forest doesn't give up its dead easily." That night, Marcus lay awake, the journal resting on his chest like a fragile shield. The twins' words haunted him, lines half-finished, sketches that hinted at a hidden world lurking beneath the familiar. He imagined them, walking those dark paths, chasing shadows no one else could see. His heart clenched with helplessness and resolve. He would find them. He had to. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes like restless spirits. Somewhere deep in the woods, a distant howl fractured the night. Marcus's breath hitched, a cold certainty settling in his bones. The forest was waiting, watching. If only we had listened to them, maybe we could have stopped this. The chill in the crisp autumn air bit sharply at the skin, and the forest was eerily silent as the hikers rounded a bend in the trail. Their footsteps softened by a carpet of fallen needles and rustling leaves. The group's excitement gave way to uneasy silence, when one of them stopped abruptly. There, pinned to the rough bark of an ancient pine tree, was the plaque, a weathered slab of wood, aged and cracked by time but freshly secured with shiny nails that caught the early morning light like a cruel spotlight. Carved deep into the wood were two names: Lucas Kendrick and Noah Kendrick. Beneath the names, strange symbols twisted and curled in patterns that seemed to pulse with an unsettling life, identical to the sketches Marcus had once seen in Lucas's hidden journal. The markings were unfamiliar yet somehow primal, as if they belonged to the forest itself. Jason, the tallest of the hikers, exhaled sharply and ran a gloved hand over the rough edges. This can't be real," he muttered, voice trembling. The others exchanged nervous glances, the excitement draining from their faces as dread seeped in. Who would put this here? And why? The plaque seemed out of place, an unnatural message dangling in the depths of a place that had long since been forgotten by most. The cold wind whispered through the branches, carrying a faint scent of earth and decay, as if the forest itself was exhaling a warning. Back in town, the news spread quickly. Sheriff Cole, now a man marked by age and years of rugged service, sat quietly in his dimly lit living room when his phone rang. The familiar voice on the other end was urgent and unmistakable: Marcus. The old friends hadn't spoken in years, but the gravity in Marcus's tone pulled Cole out of his retirement like a stubborn shadow refusing to fade. "I need you, Cole. It's about the plaque. The symbols. Everything," Marcus said, voice heavy with a mix of hope and dread. "I can't shake the feeling that we're on the edge of something dark." Cole tightened his grip on the phone, the leather of his chair creaking beneath him. His weathered eyes reflected a storm of memories he thought were buried. "I'll be there first thing. We owe it to those boys and this town to find out what's really going on." The next morning, Cole and Marcus stood beneath the towering pine. The plaque hung ominously, its wooden surface rough against the smooth bark, the nails still gleaming unervingly bright. Cole's fingers traced the symbols, his brow furrowing. "The old order," he muttered, recalling whispers from long ago. This was their mark. Marcus knelt, examining the ground at the tree's base. Fresh footprints circled in a haphazard pattern, too small for an adult, yet too deliberate to be an animal. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. "They're watching," Marcus said softly, eyes scanning the shifting shadows beyond the tree line. The forest seemed to close in around them, the ancient pines casting long, twisting shadows that danced just out of sight. A distant crow cawed, breaking the silence like a sudden crack in the night. Both men stood, eyes sharp, senses on edge. "We're not dealing with simple vandals," Cole said grimly, his voice low but resolute. "This isn't just a message, it's a warning." Marcus crouched low beside the massive pine, his fingers tracing the jagged edges of the carved plaque nailed firmly into the bark. The names Lucas Kendrick and Noah Kendrick were etched with deliberate care, but the symbols surrounding them twisted into shapes that made his skin prickle with unease. The late afternoon light filtered weakly through the dense canopy, casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts on the forest floor. He glanced over at Sheriff Cole, whose weathered face was drawn tight with concentration, eyes narrowed beneath heavy brows. "These symbols," Cole's voice was low, gravelly, weighted with the kind of knowledge passed down through whispers and half-forgotten stories. "People used to say they belonged to the old order, some secret group that vanished decades ago, gone without a trace, or so they thought." Marcus swallowed, the chill in the air suddenly sharper, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. The twins had been chasing something dangerous, something that wasn't just legend. His heart hammered in his chest, a mix of fear and fierce determination driving him forward. He rose slowly, scanning the ground with a trained eye, their faint impressions pressed into the damp earth. Footprints, not animal tracks, no. These were too small, oddly shaped, the soles patterned unlike any human shoe Marcus recognized from years of outdoor work. His pulse quickened. Whoever had placed the plaque here had come recently, moving silently in the shadows. "Cole," Marcus whispered, voice tight with urgency. "Look at this." Cole knelt beside him, his eyes following the circle of prints around the base of the tree. "Fresh," he said grimly. "Someone's been watching. Maybe still is." The forest around them seemed to close in, the usual rustle of leaves and chirp of distant birds replaced by a suffocating silence. A breeze stirred suddenly, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible movement in the underbrush. Marcus's skin prickled as he caught a glimpse of shifting shadows just beyond the reach of their flashlight's beam. "We're not alone out here," Marcus said, voice barely above a breath. His gaze flicked upward to meet Cole's steady, unblinking eyes. The sheriff's hand moved instinctively toward the worn revolver resting against his hip, fingers curling tightly around the grip. "Let's find out who's still playing these games," Cole replied, his tone low and resolute, a flicker of steel hardening his usual calm demeanor. They moved cautiously, boots sinking softly into the leaf litter, senses stretched taut. Every crack of a twig, every whisper of wind felt amplified in the charged atmosphere. Marcus's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. The plaque, the strange symbols, the fresh footprints. This was no random act. Someone was deliberately sending a message, and watching to see who would answer. As they circled the ancient pine once more, Marcus felt an icy knot tighten in his gut. The forest, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now seemed alien and threatening. The very air vibrated with secrets old and dangerous. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of unseen eyes piercing through the trees. Cole's voice cut through the tension, a quiet command. "Stay sharp. They want us to think twice. We don't." Marcus nodded, steeling himself. The past was reaching out through the shadows, dragging them deeper into a game where the stakes were more than just lost boys. They were fighting for truth, for justice, for answers buried beneath years of silence. The cold night wrapped around them like a shroud as they moved forward, the symbols on the plaque seeming to pulse faintly in the fading light. The forest whispered warnings in voices only the brave, or the foolish, would dare to hear. "We're not alone out here," Marcus whispered, and Cole nodded silently, gripping his old service revolver tighter. "Let's find out who's still playing these games." The fire crackled low, its warm glow barely pushing back the heavy darkness that pressed in from the towering pines surrounding Marcus's small campsite. His eyes were fixed on the weathered wooden plaque nailed high on the ancient tree, its faded carvings catching the firelight with an eerie shimmer. The names, Lucas Kendrick and Noah Kendrick, seemed to hold a weight far beyond mere letters etched in wood. Marcus's fingers drummed restlessly against his knee as the minutes stretched into hours. The forest was alive with sounds, the snap of twigs under unseen feet, the whisper of leaves stirred by a cold breeze, and the distant, lonely hoot of an owl that punctuated the silence like a solemn warning. Exhaustion tugged at Marcus's eyelids, the steady rhythm of the fire and the night's chill fighting for his focus. He leaned back against the rough bark of the pine, taking a slow breath to steady the jittery pounding of his heart. Just as he was beginning to think the night would pass uneventfully, a faint rustling shattered the stillness, a soft but distinct sound, like cloth brushing against branches or footsteps careful enough to avoid dry leaves. Marcus's senses snapped alert. He sat upright, muscles tense, eyes scanning the blackness beyond the firelight. A shadow flickered between the trunks, swift, deliberate. A figure moved cautiously, cloaked in darkness as if trying to become one with the forest itself. Marcus's pulse quickened, the familiar mix of fear and determination surging through him. "Hey!" he called, voice low but firm, trying to pierce the night without sounding threatening. The figure paused, just for a heartbeat, before melting deeper into the shadows, vanishing as silently as it had appeared. Marcus cursed softly under his breath. He grabbed his flashlight, sweeping its beam through the trees, but found only empty space. The chill in the air deepened, as if the forest itself were watching, waiting. "Whoever you are, you can't hide forever," Marcus muttered, a grin set to his jaw. He stared into the darkness a moment longer before extinguishing the flashlight, preferring the cover of night over its harsh glare. Morning arrived too quickly. The sky was pale and gray, the first light filtering through the dense canopy like a hesitant promise. Marcus met Sheriff Cole beneath the same towering pine where the plaque hung. The sheriff's weathered face was tight with concern, his deep-set eyes shadowed by a heavy brow. "You saw something last night?" Cole asked, voice low, steady, but edged with unease. Marcus nodded. A figure, cloaked, moved like they knew these woods better than anyone. "I called out, but they vanished before I could get close." Cole frowned, glancing around the undergrowth. "This forest has long memories. If someone's been here recently, they're sending a message. Or guarding something." Together, they knelt to inspect the earth beneath the plaque. The ground was disturbed, small patches of upturned soil, faint impressions in the damp dirt that didn't match any familiar animal tracks. "These prints?" Marcus traced a finger along the path, feeling the slight ridges. "They're too small for a grown man's boots, but too deliberate to be from animals. Something else." Cole's hand instinctively went to his belt, where his revolver rested. "We're not alone out here," he said quietly, eyes scanning the distant tree line. "Someone or something is watching." The unease that had settled over the town in recent weeks seemed to cling to the morning air. News had spread quickly. Strange symbols etched into walls, carved into benches, always accompanied by the twins' initials. The townsfolk whispered in hushed tones about old legends and new fears. Marcus felt it too, the invisible weight of those stories pressing down, demanding attention. "We're chasing shadows," Marcus admitted, voice rough with tension. Yet beneath the fear, a stubborn thread of resolve held firm. He couldn't walk away, not now. Not when the pieces were starting to align. Cole nodded, matching Marcus's gaze. "They want us to remember." Marcus and Cole sat across from Dr. Elias Grant in the dimly lit study of the old Historical Society building. The air was heavy with the scent of aged paper and wood polish, shadows flickering from the lone desk lamp that cast more questions than answers across the cluttered room. Elias, a man in his late 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing, leaned back in his creaking leather chair, studying the worn journal Marcus had placed carefully on the desk between them. Marcus's fingers trembled slightly as he opened the journal again, the brittle pages crackling softly. Each line of Lucas's handwriting was a thread pulling him deeper into a web of secrets he barely understood. "You see," Marcus began, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "The symbols, the notes, they all point to the old order, but no one really knows what it was, or if it still exists." His eyes flicked up to Elias, searching for some confirmation, some guidance. Elias nodded slowly, a crease forming between his brows. "The old order," he said, voice low and cautious, "is more than just a legend whispered around campfires. For centuries, it has been the guardian of something ancient, something powerful, hidden deep within the Pinecrest Mountains. They believed it was not for ordinary eyes or hands." He paused, his gaze darkening. "Those who dared to pry often vanished without a trace. The order does not tolerate interference." Cole shifted uneasily, the weight of his service revolver pressing against his thigh under the desk reminding him of the danger they were courting. "You think the twins got too close?" he asked, voice rough, eyes fixed on the journal's jagged end. Their last entries, Lucas never finished his thoughts. Like something stopped him. Marcus swallowed hard, the memory of those pages etched in his mind. They were planning to expose the Order's secrets to the world. His voice cracked, a mixture of fear and determination. "If that's true, it explains everything, the disappearance, the symbols appearing around town. They triggered something." Elias's eyes met Marcus's with a grave intensity. "And that something has been asleep for far too long. Your investigation has stirred it awake." He ran a hand through his thinning hair, the gesture revealing a man burdened by years of knowledge and regret. "Be very careful. The Order's reach goes beyond what you can see. Sometimes, the stones that lie beneath are better left untouched." The room seemed to close in, the shadows thickening as the weight of Elias's words settled over them. Marcus clenched his fists, the resolve burning brighter despite the chill crawling up his spine. "We're not going to stop," he said quietly. "Not until we find out what happened to Lucas and Noah." Elias sighed deeply, the sound like a warning carried on the wind. "Just remember this. Curiosity has a price, and sometimes that price is far greater than any of us expect." Outside, the wind howled softly through the trees, as if echoing the unspoken threats lurking just beyond the walls. The past had been disturbed, and nothing would ever be the same. "Some stones are better left unturned," Elias cautioned. Marcus's breath caught as he stepped into the wreckage of his cabin. Papers were strewn across the floor, their edges curled and torn, ink smudged and smeared as if someone had frantically searched through them. His desk drawer lay open, emptied, and his computer screen was cracked, the keyboard shattered under the weight of a careless blow. The air smelled faintly of burnt electronics and dust. Every muscle in Marcus's body tightened with a cold surge of fear and anger. Someone had been here. Someone had been looking for Lucas's journal, the very same journal that held secrets he wasn't ready to lose. His hands trembled slightly as he crouched down to gather scattered notes. A page fluttered to the ground, revealing a hastily drawn map with an intricate path winding into the mountains, accompanied by symbols he recognized from the plaque and Lucas's sketches. The journal had hinted at an ancient cave system, a place locals whispered about with hushed dread. "Why would someone want this so badly?" Marcus muttered, voice barely above a whisper. His mind raced. The order couldn't be far behind. Later, standing beside Sheriff Cole at the edge of the mountain, Marcus's eyes fixed on the narrow mouth of the cave concealed by thick brambles and shadows. Cole's weathered face was drawn tight, the years of wilderness patrol etched into every line. "You sure about this?" Cole asked, voice low but steady. Marcus nodded, gripping his backpack straps tighter. "If this is where the truth hides, I'm going in." They switched on their flashlights, the beams cutting through the inky darkness like swords. The air immediately turned cooler, damp with the scent of earth and moss. Each step echoed off the jagged stone walls, their boots crunching on loose gravel. Marcus's heart pounded in rhythm with the soft drip of water from unseen crevices above. Symbols adorned the walls, ancient carvings glowing faintly in the beam's light, twisting patterns that seemed to breathe with an energy just beyond comprehension. "Look at this," Marcus whispered, pointing to a large circle surrounded by glyphs. "It matches the plaque's carvings." Cole knelt, running his fingers over the rough stone. "I've never seen anything like this," he said, unease flickering in his eyes. The deeper they ventured, the heavier the air became, thickening as if charged with an unseen force. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest, a pressure that clawed at his breath. Shadows seemed to move in the periphery, elusive but unsettling. He fought the urge to glance back, pressing forward despite the cold dread settling in his bones. A distant rumble vibrated through the cavern, low and resonant, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Marcus's flashlight flickered momentarily, plunging them into near darkness before steadying again. "Did you feel that?" he asked, voice tense. Cole swallowed hard. "This place, it's not natural." His grip tightened on his revolver, the metal cold and reassuring in his hand. Suddenly, the path opened into a wide chamber. Stalactites hung like ancient chandeliers, dripping steadily into shallow pools that mirrored the dim light. In the center stood a massive stone altar, half swallowed by creeping vines and moss. The twins' initials, LK and NK, were carved deeply into the altar's surface, alongside the pulsing symbols that radiated a faint, eerie glow. Marcus stepped closer, his fingers tracing the worn carvings. Memories of Lucas's handwriting flooded back, his hopes, his fears, the relentless pursuit of a truth that had cost him everything. The altar seemed to hum with a silent power, filling the cavern with an invisible presence that made the hairs on Marcus's neck rise. "Whatever this is," Marcus breathed, "it's why the twins disappeared." His voice was barely audible, swallowed by the vastness around them. A sudden sound shattered the silence. A soft, deliberate footstep echoed behind them. Both men spun, weapons raised, flashlights slicing through the shadows, but no figure appeared. Only the echo of their own breath and the distant drip of water. Marcus's voice was steady but edged with warning. "Show yourself." The cavern seemed to swallow his challenge, the walls pulsating faintly with ancient energy. The secret they sought was alive and watching, waiting in the darkness. "We're close. I can feel it." The cold stone pressed against Marcus's palms as he reached out to the altar, its surface rough and damp with moss. The flickering beam of his flashlight danced over the intricate carvings, ancient, weathered symbols twisting into patterns that seemed both foreign and oddly familiar. The twins' initials, LK and NK, were etched deep into the stone, their sharp lines undimmed by time. Marcus's breath hitched, the air thick and heavy around them. A low, almost imperceptible humming began to pulse from the depths of the cavern, vibrating against his ribs and threading into his thoughts like a distant warning. He swallowed hard, fingers curling into a worn photograph pulled carefully from his jacket pocket. The image showed Lucas and Noah, grinning side by side, eyes bright with that fearless curiosity only youth could hold. They were onto something bigger than any of us imagined, Marcus whispered, voice barely above the cave's oppressive silence. His eyes scanned the dark corners where the flashlight's glow faltered, searching for answers in the shadows. Cole's breathing was steady but tense as he shifted his weight, his hand resting lightly on the grip of his revolver. The sheriff's gaze swept the cavern, muscles taut, alert for any sign of movement. The air seemed to thicken, the weight of centuries pressing down like the walls themselves were alive and watching. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the stillness, footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing softly against the stone. The sound grew louder, measured, and unmistakably human. Both men snapped to attention, spinning on their heels as instinct took hold. Weapons raised, eyes narrowed against the shadows that now seemed to gather like smoke. But the darkness offered no figure, only shifting shapes and the faint glimmer of reflected light. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the steady hum vibrating through the floor beneath their boots. "Show yourself," Marcus demanded, voice steady though his heart hammered in his chest. He stepped forward, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the gloom, searching. His voice carried an edge of resolve beneath the fear, a promise to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The cavern held its secrets tightly, as if mocking their intrusion. The shadows recoiled and twisted, leaving only silence and the echo of their own breathing. Cole's eyes flicked to Marcus, a silent question hanging between them. Were they truly alone, or was something waiting just beyond the reach of light? Marcus swallowed the tightening knot in his throat. The altar beneath his hand seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the carvings glowing faintly as the humming grew louder, vibrating through his bones like a deep, ancient heartbeat. He clenched the photograph tighter, drawing strength from the faces that had set him on this path. "We're not alone," Cole murmured, voice low but firm, his finger tightening on the trigger. "And whatever's here, it's been waiting." The air shifted, shadows lengthened and writhed as if stirred by some unseen force, and the cave's heartbeat quickened in a slow, relentless rhythm. Marcus felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on him, the chilling certainty that the forest's oldest secrets were waking and watching them. "Show yourself," Marcus repeated, louder this time, his voice echoing off the stone, a challenge flung into the dark. But the cavern answered with silence. Only the pulsing hum and the distant drip of water echoed back as the tension tightened. A fragile thread stretched thin between discovery and danger. "We're not alone," Marcus demanded, voice steady despite the rising fear. The cavern walls swallowed the weak beam of Marcus's flashlight, leaving only shards of light to cut through the thick darkness. The low hum that had filled the air since their arrival now seemed to pulse with every heartbeat pounding in his chest. Then, from the shadows just beyond the circle of light, a figure stirred, tall, cloaked in a dark hood that swallowed his face in shadow. The man moved with deliberate calm, his steps soundless against the stone floor. Marcus's breath caught. He instinctively reached for the revolver at his side, but the figure raised a gloved hand, halting him. "You seek what should remain hidden," The man's voice came, low and chilling, echoing faintly against the cavern walls. It was calm, measured, but carried a weight that pressed down on Marcus's shoulders like a physical burden. The voice was neither angry nor threatening, but it sent a shiver rippling through his spine. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady as he responded, "I'm here for the truth, for Lucas and Noah." The cloaked figure paused, and though his face was lost in darkness, Marcus felt the cold, unyielding gaze fixed upon him. "The twins crossed a line long ago," the man said slowly. "Curiosity can be a dangerous thing. They awaken forces that few have seen and lived to tell, but forces that can consume even the strongest." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms. "What happened to them? Where are they now? You owe me answers." The stranger's shoulders twitched in emotion almost like a sigh. "Answers come at a price. The old order has guarded this secret for generations. Rituals, sacrifices, powers beyond mortal understanding. The twins dared to unravel threads woven deep within the mountain. That is why they vanished." A flicker of frustration surged inside Marcus. "Vanished? You mean they're gone? Dead? Lost forever?" The guardian's voice dropped lower, reverberating like a warning. "They are not lost as you understand it. The forest keeps its own. Their fate is bound to this place, a chain forged by choices made long ago." Marcus's mind spun, wrestling with the impossible. The boyish faces in the photograph he held seemed to stare back at him, eyes full of hope and questions. How could a secret so vast and dark have swallowed two lives whole? Why protect this power? What is it? Marcus demanded, stepping closer despite the chill that crept through the cavern air. The figure's hand gestured to the carved altar, the symbols glowing faintly in the flashlight's beam. "This mountain holds an ancient force, something that, if released, could reshape the world or destroy it. The old order was born to guard it, to keep men from tempting fate. But such vigilance breeds cruelty. The cost is always paid in blood." Marcus's chest tightened. "So the order kills anyone who gets too close?" The man nodded slowly, silencing curiosity to preserve balance. "It is a burden heavy with sacrifice." For a moment, silence stretched between them like a thick fog. Marcus searched the dark face beneath the hood for any hint of mercy or regret. Instead, he found only cold resolve. "I don't care about your warnings," Marcus said, voice firm. "I want justice. For Lucas and Noah. They deserve to be remembered." The guardian stepped back, shadows swallowing his form again. "Remember this. Some truths are chains that bind the living as much as the dead. Tread carefully, Marcus. The past is never truly behind you." As the figure slipped silently back into the blackness of the cavern, Marcus stood rooted, heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. The weight of the secret he'd uncovered pressed down like a stone, but so did the fierce need to see the truth through. Sometimes, the past is a chain that binds us. Marcus stared at the faded symbols freshly etched on the peeling paint of the old community center wall. His fingers itched to trace the lines, but he forced himself to step back, absorbing the growing unrest that had settled over Pinecrest like a suffocating fog. The sharp autumn air bit at his cheeks as the wind whispered through the bare branches overhead. Shadows from the ancient pines stretched long across the cracked sidewalk, mirroring the creeping fear that gripped the town. Beside him, Sheriff Cole shifted uneasily, his weathered face tight with conflict. "It's worse than I thought," Cole muttered, eyes darting to the symbol again. "These marks, they're popping up everywhere. At the edge of the forest, near the school, even on the courthouse steps." Marcus clenched his jaw. "And no one's talking openly about it. Everyone's too scared to connect the dots." His voice was low but resolute. "This isn't just vandalism. It's a message. A warning." Cole's gaze hardened. "The order's grip runs deeper than I wanted to admit. I've seen it with my own eyes, people in places of power, keeping quiet or turning blind. It's like they're part of the problem." The crunch of dry leaves underfoot echoed as they walked toward the sheriff's truck. Marcus's mind raced through the pieces of the puzzle. The symbols, the disappearances, the rumors of a secret society manipulating Pinecrest from the shadows. The twins' vanishing had been just the surface of something rotten. Later that evening, Marcus sat in the dim light of his cluttered study, his laptop humming softly amid stacks of old papers and photos. The walls seemed to close in with the weight of the town's silence pressing on him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant. Then, with a steady breath, he dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Daniel Hayes. Came the smooth, measured voice on the other end, tinged with curiosity. "It's Marcus," he said, voice rough with urgency. "I need your help. Something's happening here in Pinecrest, something dangerous, and it's bigger than we realize." Across the line, Daniel was silent for a moment. Then, "I'm listening." Marcus explained what they'd found. The symbols, the chilling encounters, the evidence pointing to the old order's influence creeping into every corner of the town. He spoke of the fear spreading like wildfire and the cover-ups that ensured the truth stayed buried. Daniel's tone grew serious. "If what you're saying is true, you're stepping into a hornet's nest. But I've chased darker secrets before. Let's see what we can uncover." The next days were a whirlwind. Marcus and Daniel pored over town records, old meeting minutes, and whispered accounts from reluctant locals. Each lead revealed cracks in the official narrative. Names tied to the order appeared on city council rosters, law enforcement, even within the school board. The web of silence was thick, stitched together with fear and power. One evening, after a long day sifting through files in the dim glow of the library, Daniel leaned back, rubbing his weary eyes. "This isn't just a secret society. It's a shadow government," he said, voice low. "They control what people see and hear. They protect themselves by silencing anyone who asks too many questions." Marcus nodded grimly. "And the twins? Their disappearance was no accident. They threatened that control." Cole's words echoed in his mind. The deeper the roots, the darker the soil. The night air pressed heavy against Marcus's skin as he hurried down the cracked sidewalk toward his modest cabin on the edge of Pinecrest. His breath came in sharp bursts, clouding before him like smoke. Somewhere behind, the crunch of footsteps echoed, too close, too deliberate. Marcus's heart pounded, every nerve screaming to run faster, but his legs felt rooted in place. The sharp edge of panic sharpened when a shadow lunged from behind a tree, hands reaching out with cold intent. Marcus twisted, narrowly avoiding a grasp that would have thrown him to the ground. A struggle followed, brutal, raw, urgent, but the attacker was quick and desperate, teeth clenched in rage. Marcus fought with everything he had, fists connecting with bone, the taste of blood sharp in his mouth when a sudden shout forced the assailant to retreat into the darkness. Shaking and breathless, Marcus pressed his back against the rough bark of a pine tree, eyes scanning the black forest that now seemed alive with hidden threats. "This isn't random," he muttered to himself, fingers trembling as he fumbled for his phone. No signal. Of course. He was alone, vulnerable, caught in a battle that was no longer just about secrets but survival. Days later, inside the cramped, dimly lit office of Sheriff Cole, the weight of unspoken truths hung thick in the stale air. Marcus sat across the battered wooden desk from the sheriff, whose weathered face bore the scars of years in the mountains, and now of secrets long buried. Cole's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee, eyes avoiding Marcus's steady gaze. "I didn't want you dragged into this, Marcus," he said quietly, voice rough with fatigue. "But there's more to this old order than you know. My family, we've been tangled up with them for generations. Loyalty isn't easy to break." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You're saying your family's connected to the people who took Lucas and Noah?" His voice was sharp, laced with disbelief and pain. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Cole sighed, a deep, haunted sound. "Because I wanted to protect you and myself. The order doesn't forgive easily. They watch everyone who gets close. And now, with Daniel's articles out there, the whole town is watching. But that's just the start. The real danger is coming from inside." The revelation left Marcus reeling. The brothers' disappearance was no accident or simple tragedy. They had uncovered something powerful enough to shake the foundations of Pinecrest's oldest secrets, and for that, they paid the ultimate price. Marcus's phone buzzed relentlessly as he and Daniel Hayes prepared their latest expose in a small, cluttered newsroom. Daniel's eyes darted nervously toward the window, half expecting shadows to creep closer. "Every word we print," Daniel said grimly, "is a strike against them, but it also puts a target on our backs." The community's response was immediate and fierce. Outrage swelled across Pinecrest, voices demanding answers, justice, reform. Yet, beneath the rising tide of support, dark forces moved to suffocate the truth. Whispers of lies spread through the town like wildfire, claims that Marcus and Daniel were stirring trouble for personal gain, accusations aimed at discrediting the brothers' work and character. Witnesses who stepped forward found themselves silenced, some through intimidation, others vanishing quietly in the night. Marcus watched helplessly as friendships shattered and alliances crumbled under the pressure. Old friends stopped returning calls. Trusted sources grew silent, shadows lurking behind every conversation. The Order's reach was far deeper than he'd ever imagined, entwining itself within Pinecrest's very heart. Late one evening, Marcus sat alone in his cabin, the glow of his laptop screen casting pale light across the room. He reread the messages, threats thinly veiled as warnings, photos of his family taken from afar, the unmistakable proof that nothing was private anymore. Exhaustion clawed at him, but surrender was not an option. The weight of the brothers' legacy pressed down on his shoulders, reminding him of why he had started this fight. Truth is a weapon, but it comes with a price. The night air hung thick with smoke and tension as Marcus crouched behind the cracked stone wall bordering the old mill. Flames flickered against the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced and twisted across the empty streets of Pinecrest. The smell of burning wood and scorched earth clawed at his lungs, but he forced himself to breathe steadily. Every muscle in his body was taut, every sense on high alert. The fire was no accident. It was a message, a warning from the old order to those daring to challenge their control. Marcus's jaw clenched as he scanned the horizon, the glow of another blaze igniting near the town hall's ancient oak. This was no random act of vandalism. It was calculated, designed to fracture a community already stretched thin by fear and suspicion. Behind him, footsteps approached softly. Daniel Hayes emerged from the shadows, his usually sharp eyes clouded with exhaustion and worry. "Another fire," Daniel whispered, his voice heavy with disbelief. "And they're watching us closer than ever." Marcus nodded, his gaze still fixed on the flickering infernos. "We're stirring something fierce, Daniel. The old order isn't just a secret society anymore. They're a storm that's ready to break." His words hung between them, thick as the smoke curling upward into the dark sky. The town was unraveling. Rumors whispered like wildfire, strange figures seen slipping between trees, unfamiliar faces lurking in dimly lit alleyways, and a growing chorus of voices accusing Marcus and Daniel of inventing ghosts to scare the town. At the same time, others rallied behind them, demanding truth, transparency, and justice. The divide was a knife twisting in Pinecrest's heart, pitting neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. Marcus felt the weight of it all settle like a stone pressing against his chest. His closest allies had vanished into hiding, their homes empty and silent, fear driving them underground. The very people who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with him were now shadows, lost to threats whispered in the night or menacing knocks on doors. Every phone call was met with static or silence. Every meeting was a risk. Trust was a luxury the town could no longer afford. Sheriff Cole's face haunted Marcus. The older man had always been a pillar of steadiness, but now he was a man divided, torn between loyalty to the law and the pull of his bloodline. Cole's hands trembled the last time Marcus saw him, his eyes filled with a conflicted sorrow. "I can't fight both sides," Cole had admitted quietly, voice rough with emotion. Yet despite everything, Cole chose to feed Marcus critical information. Secret meeting times, names whispered in dark rooms, locations of gatherings hidden deep in the woods. Each tip was a lifeline in a sea of darkness, but also a gamble that could cost Cole everything. That evening, beneath the towering pines whose branches creaked under a cold breeze, Marcus stood alone. The forest seemed to hold its breath, leaves rustling faintly like distant whispers. He looked up at the canopy, where slivers of moonlight struggled through, revealing a sky scattered with stars. His mind raced, replaying memories of Lucas and Noah, their laughter, their curiosity, the way their eyes gleamed with the promise of discovery. Those faces were now symbols, rallying cries for a town desperate for hope. He clenched his fists, the rough bark pressing into his palms, grounding him. "We're running out of time," he murmured to the night, voice steady but edged with urgency. "The old order won't let go without a fight, and neither will we." His breath came out in visible puffs, mingling with the chill as he prepared himself for what was to come. In the distance, a lone owl hooted, a sharp reminder of the wilderness's watchful eyes. Somewhere beyond the trees, faint footsteps echoed, a rhythm matching the pounding of his heart. The battle was no longer a choice. It was inevitable. This is more than a battle. It's a reckoning. The morning mist clung to the tall pines like a fragile veil, softening the sharp edges of the forest that had long held its secrets close. Marcus stood silently at the edge of the clearing, the chill in the air seeping through his jacket as if trying to reach the ache in his bones. Before him rose the newly unveiled memorial, a slab of smooth, cold stone carved with the names Lucas Kendrick and Noah Kendrick. Around the edges, the mysterious symbols that had haunted their investigation were etched deep into the granite, a reminder of the dark path the twins had walked. The forest seemed to breathe quietly now, its usual restless whispers replaced by a solemn stillness. Marcus's fingers traced the cool surface, his touch lingering on the letters as if hoping to draw strength from the names. His eyes, heavy with exhaustion and grief, scanned the clearing where friends, neighbors, and families had gathered earlier to pay their respects. The healing had begun, but the scars ran deep beneath the town's fragile calm. He swallowed hard, memories flooding back, Lucas's bright curiosity, Noah's cautious determination, the fear in Marcus's own heart the night they vanished. A soft breeze stirred the fallen leaves, sending a faint rustle that felt like a whisper from the past. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound wash over him. "It's over, but not forgotten," he told himself, though the weight of everything lost pressed heavily on his chest. His mind replayed the long months of fear, the nights spent chasing shadows, and the faces of those who had helped, and those who had disappeared into silence. Behind him, footsteps crunched softly on the forest floor. Marcus turned to see Sheriff Cole approaching, his aged face lined with the years of burdens borne. The sheriff's voice was low but steady. "They'd be proud of what we did here, Marcus. It's not the end, but it's a start." Marcus nodded, grateful for the steady presence. "I still feel like I'm missing pieces, like the forest hasn't given up all its secrets." His voice cracked, betraying the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. "But maybe that's how it has to be. Some things we carry with us, even when the storm has passed." Cole rested a hand on Marcus's shoulder, the gesture firm and reassuring. "The order's grip is weaker now. We've broken the silence. That counts for something." His eyes glanced toward the dense trees, shadowed yet somehow less foreboding than before. "This place is quieter, but it still watches." They stood together in silence, the distant calls of birds breaking the stillness. Marcus's thoughts drifted to the twins, their laughter, their dreams, and the tragic mystery that had pulled him into this fight. He felt a flicker of resolve rising from the depths of his grief. A sudden rustle from the underbrush made both men tense, but it was only a stray squirrel darting away. Marcus exhaled slowly, the tension ebbing like a tide retreating from the shore. He looked once more at the memorial, the names etched in stone now a permanent testament. "I promised them I wouldn't stop searching," Marcus whispered, voice steady with conviction. "No matter how long it takes." Sheriff Cole gave a faint smile, understanding the unspoken vow between them. "And we'll be right here with you." The sun broke through the thinning clouds, casting dappled light over the forest floor. The shadows seemed less dark, the air lighter but filled with an unspoken promise of remembrance, resilience, and the unending search for truth. Marcus took one last look at the memorial before turning away, his steps purposeful and steady as he moved deeper into the forest's edge. Somewhere beyond the trees, the past lingered, but so did hope. You are not forgotten, and neither is the truth. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It explores themes of mystery, loss, and the haunting consequences of unresolved secrets. Its purpose is to raise awareness about the impact of disappearance and the enduring hope for answers.